Hey everybody, this is TJR, hanging out with Superfan
Hey.
and Grogu,
Yep.
and got this package today. This is Pink Floyd's Animals and The Wall on vinyl. I used to have The Wall on vinyl back when it originally came out. That was really the first Pink Floyd album that I really listened to. I was still in high school when that album came out. I was in an early garage band, and my other bandmates talked about getting to go see the concert and just being absolutely blown away. And they talked about the album a lot. And I realized I had to hear it too, so it was an album that not sure how I got the money to buy it, but I did because I really had zero money at that age. And I did get my first job in high school. I'm trying to remember if it was around the time I had the job, but even then, money was very scarce for me. But I picked it up, and it was the first Pink Floyd album I really got into and listened to quite a bit. And when I listened to it and read the liner notes, I found out that it was produced by Bob Ezrin, whose work I was already familiar with because I had a copy of Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare, which he produced also. And I began to make this connection with him. He also produced Kiss's Destroyer. I already knew those two albums before I knew The Wall. And I knew he had this flair for the theatrical when he produced an album, because The Wall was a very different sounding Pink Floyd album in comparison to the other albums that had preceded it, which included Animals, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here. The Wall was quite different. So anyways, though, we'll talk more about that in a moment. But I decided that first of all, with the remix coming out, I wanted to hear the original album, Animals, on vinyl. Don't have an original pressing, but they had both of these albums on sale. I found them online. There was an online retailer who was doing a special sale. They had these marked down quite a bit. And I noticed that these albums weren't even available on Amazon. At least they weren't at the time when I purchased them. And I thought, I should pick these up while I still have the chance. They may run out of print eventually, eventually I guess they get reissued because they're Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd is always going to sell reissues. But
those albums have been, I know The Wall has been in the Billboard Hot 100 or in the...
Are you thinking of Dark Side of the Moon? Because that was like forever the longest charting album ever. That it stayed in the Billboard Top 100 for a very long time before it finally fell off.
Yeah, like years and years. Maybe
I was more like decades,
Yeah.
Before it finally, it just had this amazing reputation for that. And
I was thinking The Wall was too, though.
it may very well have been. I just know that Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon had that reputation for being, for charting for it's seemingly forever. It stayed in the top 100 just for the longest time. It was the longest charting album in music history. And it did finally fall off, but man, what a record it had. I don't remember exactly how long, but I know it was quite the record. So, anyways, I decided I definitely wanted to get Animals, and I have the CD, but I also wanted to hear it on vinyl, and I'd gotten good recommendations online that these modern pressings did sound really good. I do have Dark Side of the Moon. I did pick that up a while ago, maybe about a year or so ago. So anyways, I'm looking at these right now, just making sure they're all good before I take the shrink wrap off of them. There was that incident, of course, with the Jethro Tull album, the half-speed LP remastering, and actually not remastering, Steven Wilson remix, the half-speed remastering of the Steven Wilson remix, where it was damaged, and I took the shrink wrap off. You're still able to return it, of course, but I think sometimes if something's that damaged, don't even take the shrink wrap off, just immediately return it. So let's look at this. This looks good. This is Animals. The cover, I'm impressed with how good the cover art looks, first of all, even before taking the shrink wrap off. It looks amazing, this cover art. I don't think I've ever seen it look so good. Not on my CD, that's for sure.
Well,
And
that's
so,
because it's a tiny picture.
well, yeah, that's true. It doesn't help that it's so tiny. But just gonna look at the hype sticker here. Animals Remastered, the stereo remastered album on heavyweight 180 gram vinyl. Remastered from the original analog tapes by James Guthrie, Joe Plante, and Bernie Grudman. Original UK release date, January 1977. And so those are some good credits right there. And they're saying from the original analog tapes. I hope that's true. You know, I guess after the MoFi thing, you know, we found out there's digital steps. For all we know, there's digital steps with this too. Who knows? But everybody tells me it sounds great, so I'm not too worried about it. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Anyways, let's pull this off here. But I have noticed, that's been the thing about getting vintage, pre-digital vinyl, is there has been a real magic experience hearing pure analog recording played on analog equipment. It really has been a cool experience. And so let's go ahead here. There we go. We have the shrink wrap started. We have liftoff. And gonna open these up and also just gonna talk about the albums. It occurs to me, Superfan, that I have never really talked to you much about Pink Floyd.
Yeah, no.
We've never really talked about it. I sense they're not a group that you were like particularly heavily into.
No.
It wasn't your generation though.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my thing anyway.
Well, yeah, you were.
Well, I was more into the poppy, and they're not particularly
Yeah.
poppy.
And you were more into the '80s, whereas I was more into the '70s. This, we both came from distinctly different generations, musically, different decades, musically speaking. And there we go. Save the hype sticker. I will take care of that later. And yeah, wow. The artwork looks absolutely spectacular. That looks awesome. Let's open up the gatefold.
Okay.
Yeah, it does look nice. There we go. Here's the gatefold. We have a helicopter outside. If you hear that, that's what that is.
And you may hear a little bit of just white noise in the background. We're researching our next trip.
Yeah, which we'll talk about later. Here we go. The lyrics here. Very nice. Heavyweight cardboard sleeve. I will put this in an anti-static sleeve though. Not gonna pull the vinyl out right now. Might be kind of hard. Oh, it's actually coming out pretty easy. There we go. That was easy to pull out. Let's take a look here. Very clean, actually. Very, very clean. Wow. I always expect some small amount of debris, even on new records, because it's, a lot of times it's not perfect where they're manufactured, but this, nice job. There we go. Looks good. Pink Floyd, Animals. Have you heard this album?
I'm sure I have. I worked in a record store, but it never really grabbed me or permeated my consciousness, so to speak.
No worries.
I think I'm most familiar with Dark Side of the Moon because we would do The Wizard of Floyd.
The Wizard of Floyd, yes. We'll talk about that in another video. Definitely
Yeah.
want to talk about The Wizard of Floyd, yes. And Animals, to me, this, of course, is part of the classic period. That unbeatable run. Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall, that amazing run there. And this album here, to me, especially in comparison to The Wall, which we'll talk about in a bit, an incredibly textural album. Very textural. To the point where, while I have listened to it and read the lyrics, and I know about the concept behind the album, I understand, the connection it has loosely based on the book Animal Farm, and yet, to me, the vocals, when I listen to the album, sometimes the lyrics almost become kind of invisible, because it's such a textural album that to me the vocals are almost just another texture. I can listen to it and almost hear the vocals as just an instrument playing. And the lyrics are good, don't get me wrong, but it's just how I feel about it when I listen to it. It is, to me, it's almost like listening to an instrumental album. It's such a pure musical experience that the vocals seem to just blend in with the other instruments, and it feels like, like an instrumental album at times to me. I did discuss the advanced track for the remix, which was Dogs. And of course, when I listened to it, I read the lyrics along with it again. But I wonder if I'll feel the same way with the remix. I wonder if the vocals, because one thing that a lot of people have said, and I noticed it too, is the vocals are real distinct, much more distinct now. So I wonder if when I hear the remix, it's going to really stand out more, and I'm going to feel about it differently in that respect. We'll see. But liking what I see, this is just a beautiful, such a high-class reproduction.
Yeah.
Really thick, heavy cardboard sleeve. Everything about it. Really nice production. Really nice. So Grogu, you're going to take care of that right now. Don't let anybody get it. There we go. We're going to open the next one here, which is The Wall. Yeah. The Wall Remastered. The stereo remastered album on heavyweight 180 gram vinyl. Remastered from the original analog tapes by James Guthrie, Joe Plante, and Bernie Grundman. So the same credits here on this. That makes me feel pretty good. Let's open the shrink wrap on this one here. Okay. Now, of course, unlike Animals, a very minimalist cover. I do notice, though, the texture here. It's like a very clear sticker stuck to this. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, I think I remember now, the original was like a sticker. You could alternately peel it off. In fact, I think maybe it was either on the original or it was on the shrink wrap, and when you peeled it off, all you had was just this, cover. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I'm kind of have memories on that. Alternate memories, I guess I should say, multiple choice memories. Let's look at the gatefold, exactly as I remember it. Now, really nice. There we go. Yeah. I remember staring at all these illustrations as I listened to it, just because there's some real tiny ones here, up here. And so I remember staring at them and looking at them as I listened to the album. And then alternately, I would pull out there we go. Let's see here. Ooh, kind of tight. There we go. Alternately, I would pull them out and look at the lyrics, There we go. Heavy duty, heavy cardboard sleeve here. If I'm not mistaken, I remember this being originally on like a soft glossy paper. Of course, I'll put these in anti-static too. There we go. Let's see here, is it gonna come out easy? Oh yeah, it's gonna come out pretty easy. There we go. Ooh. Okay, let's take a look at that. That is clean. Wow. This may have even been more impressive than the other one. But yeah, I remember, of course, these labels with the illustrations on the labels. Very, very nice. Dang.
Actually, I'm thinking about this album,
Yeah.
and I do remember it from, it came out when I was living in New Orleans with my family, and
Mm-hmm.
there was a teacher strike going on at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
it got played kind of in connection with that
Really?
somehow, the
Huh.
radio and stuff.
And
It was,
now you've heard this album, of course,
yeah.
And what are your thoughts? Was it an album you liked? Was it an album? Did you
I'm kind
feel
of
similar to
in-
Animals?
I'm kind of indifferent to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good album. It wasn't anything I was gonna rush out and buy
Mm-hmm.
or play.
Mm-hmm. And that's fine. And that is fine. We don't all respond to music in the same way. And I want to always make a point of that here on this channel. We all have different tastes. And I, of course, poured over this album obsessively. This was the first Pink Floyd album I really sunk my teeth into. And from there, I wanted to hear the previous albums, just, the more famous ones. Now, of course, I do have a confession to make. The earlier albums prior to Dark Side of the Moon, I've occasionally on streaming started to listen maybe a little bit here and there, but never gotten that heavily into it. Maybe a track might have appealed to me off of one album, but not the rest. I figure if I'm going to really dive into the earlier albums, then it's going to be like a lot of things happen in my life, where suddenly I feel this huge impulse. I must start listening to this, and I will. And this has happened to me over the decades. I'll feel a huge impulse for an artist that I previously maybe was only curious about their hits or indifferent to, but all of a sudden I feel a huge compulsion to start listening, and I do. And so maybe that'll happen at some point. But I did, of course, starting with this album, go back and listen to the really famous albums. Because of course, I was hearing those tracks on FM rock radio. And so I would, had familiarity with them. And also, when I listened to this album, of course, I noticed, like I said, the name Bob Ezrin as producer, who produced, Welcome to My Nightmare, Destroyer. And this album was so different from, I didn't realize it at the time, but once I heard the albums that preceded it, I realized just how incredibly different this was, because it was so song-oriented. It had tight, compact pop rock songs fitting that structure. Many of them led into each other. One would go from one to the other to give it more of that longer concept feel.
Another Brick in the Wall is a long song.
Another Brick in the Wall, well, the thing is, when you listen to Another Brick in the Wall, before you get there, you've got The Happiest Days of Our Lives, which leads right into it, which once again gives the album more of that, that Pink Floyd feel with longer tracks. But in fact, Another Brick in the Wall Part 1, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, right into each other. But the album was basically, I think fairly tight compared to other Pink Floyd albums where they were more epic and spacey. This was much tighter songwriting, and that's the Bob Ezrin influence there. And initially, the Another Brick in, because there was, if I'm not mistaken, the Another Brick in the Wall that made radio, because there was more than one. There was Part 1, there was Part 2, Part 3, but the one that got on radio initially was going to be very short. And Bob Ezrin kept saying, no, this is your hit single. You've got to make this longer. And he convinced them to do that. And they had a hit single with it. And the thing about the hit single is that it crossed over into top 40 radio. That was the amazing thing, because, Pink Floyd, not exactly a top 40 band,
No.
but that did cross over into top 40 radio at the time during the 70s. I remember that very clearly. But yeah, very different album. Bob Ezrin, when he produces an album, it's very theatrical. And I used to think, man, if I was a big rock musician, I'd love to have him produce an album. I began to realize what producers did, you know, because I could hear the whole theatricality of Welcome to My Nightmare Destroyer and this, and I could see that commonality between them. And this is where I began to realize what producers do. And yeah, he really made Pink Floyd sound different. It still sounded like Pink Floyd, but he definitely made them sound different. He definitely helped them create an album with more concise songs versus long flowing, like a 17-minute jam like Dogs on Animals. He definitely did that. And, but yeah. And like I said, this was the first one. This is the one I really poured over. I poured over all the others too, of course, afterwards. But yeah, this was the one that got me started on the path here. And at some point I will go back. I plan to go back and listen to the previous albums when they were a very different band and check out some of that stuff. Who knows how I'll react. But in the past, when I've listened, it's just been kind of like casual listen. Yeah, I'm not too into this. And eventually I turn away from it after a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyways, though, I know there are some Floyd fans out there who listen to all of it, of course. And yay, kudos to you. But we all experience music differently. You've seen the movie, right?
I have.
What'd you think of the movie?
Well, I like the movie.
Uh-huh.
I mean, not just because Bob Geldof was in it, but partly.
Partly. You like Bob Geldof, of course, yeah. Once again, Superfan, you come more from the 80s background musically, whereas I come from the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I like the movie too. It's been a long time since I have seen it. Very long time.
Yeah, while I was in high school, we went and saw it at a midnight movie.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of when I saw it, I'm trying to remember what year it came out. If I was still in high school or already out of high school by that point. But
Well, it came out in the 80s.
Oh, okay, so I was out of high school by that point. Yeah, you were in high school at that point, yeah. But, yeah, I was definitely out of high school at that point. Because I graduated, class of 1980. So, yeah, that tells you right there. But, yeah, been a long time. I should really rewatch that movie again and, you know, and kind of do a look back on it. Maybe Robert would do it with me. I don't know if he's ever seen it. I should ask him. He's never really brought up Pink Floyd. I don't think he's that into them. Might be interesting to, like,
I bet he's seen it.
do a movie discussion with him. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. And if not, just do a look back, you know, do a look back discussion. But yeah, so can't wait to hear these. Like I said, I especially wanted to hear Animals on vinyl before I hear the remix, and it'll probably play into my comparisons. I'll certainly compare the CD too, but definitely want to compare them both. So, and of course, like I said, these were both on sale. The Pink Floyd LPs are just more expensive than other legacy artist LPs. And maybe it's because of the amount of care that, judging from the outside, that went into these, especially when I look at the credits and everything. Maybe it's the care that went into it that makes it more expensive. And if so, then that's worth it, I guess. But, you know, the proof will be in the pudding when I listen to them, which I'm going to be doing probably tomorrow, because it's getting kind of late tonight. And while we do like to disturb the neighbors, we don't like to disturb them too much, you know. Anyways, though, so cool. Thanks for coming by and hanging out while we take a look at these. Superfan, thanks for sharing your thoughts on this too, and just for joining me. I appreciate it. It's always fun.
Anytime.
And Grogu, you try to behave yourself. You're on thin ice, buddy. Let me tell you. Anyways, kids, what are you gonna do? But everybody, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for making it to the end of the video. Please click like. If you haven't done it already, please click a like, hit subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon. It's a professional show. What do you expect? And thank you, patron supporters, for all that you do.
You are fierce and mighty.
Thank you. Patron supporters receive exclusive weekly videos that nobody else does. And they oftentimes will get advanced look at videos before they premiere on the channel here. And if you'd like to be a patron supporter, please go to patreon.com/TJR the original. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Hope you all stay safe and healthy. Take care.
Bye.
Say goodbye, Grogu.